The most anticipated event of the horse racing calendar is finally upon us as I tape this on May 1st, and we eagerly await the first Saturday in May. That is right. It is Kentucky Derby week, folks. And for all of us that have been following many of these horses since August and September and October, to finally see this all culminate in a race in which all of the different divisions and parts of the country, the best of Florida, the best of Oakland, the best of New York are going to come together for the first Saturday in May and what is the Super Bowl of horse racing. This, of course, is Doubling Down. I am your host, Colin Sheehan. We are very excited to be joined by Sherbet Coffee this week. Go to sherbetcoffee.com. Use the promo code TTP20. You'll get 20% off your ground coffee. I am a user. It is what I drink every single morning. I highly recommend it. And they give back to aftercare for equine athletes. And what a great week to spread that message. Of course, we don't want to have what happened last year. We hope that all the jockeys and horses have a safe trip this entire weekend at Churchill Downs. For the Kentucky Derby, there is the Kentucky Oaks and Kentucky Derby Daily Double. On this show, we bring on an expert in the industry to help me handicap a daily double. That is putting together the winners of two races for all those tuning in that may be new to horse racing or just want to have some action this weekend. The Oaks Daily Double starts on Friday. So you're going to want to make sure you get your bet in prior to the Oaks on Friday. Let's get right to it.
Trust the Profits is proud to be sponsored by Game of Silks. Go to silks.io to get in the game. Real ownership, real races, real rewards.
Sherbet Coffee.
Calling all experts. Sniper, do you like that intro? You're the one I'm referring to, baby.
Oh man, I wouldn't refer to myself as an expert, but yeah, I'll take it for today.
This week, what beats this as a horse racing fan?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. The Derby is such a unique event. The Oaks and the Derby, the 2 days are always great racing, full fields, big crowds. Everything a horse player wants.
Do you have the anxiety that I have? Because it's the 1 week of the year when every single person around me that doesn't follow horse racing wants to know my pick for the Kentucky Derby. And you're like, man, why do you ask me, that weekend in the winter at Aqueduct when I've got
I got a real good one. Yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of Facebook messages and stuff like that. They've already started, but good thing I already kind of handicapped it, so I'm throwing my pick out there.
We'll get to that in a little bit. Save that for the people. Everyone in the comments section, please give us your Oaks and Derby double. I am, of course, joined by Barry Spears, otherwise known as the Sniper, from the Going in Circles podcast. Barry, what do you guys got going on? I see you guys throwing out content like all of us.
Yeah, we got some guests that came on this week to do a little, preview of the Derby, ins and outs, and a couple of picks here and there. And we're just kind of doing our thing, kind of blend in with the crowd and get our hands dirty a little bit and hopefully make some money this weekend.
That's right. So we're going to try to make some money here on the Oaks and Derby Daily Double. Obviously, starting off with the Kentucky Oaks. As I mentioned, this is Friday. Here's your field with the owners from the Game of Silks listed. This purse is $16,000, $16,500. Someone is going to be very happy if we can get one of these horses owned by Silks home. Of course, look at the right side of your screen there. They're all owned. So I think we've got some really good opportunities here with just FYI, ways and means. If one of these owners wins, they will be on the show in the next couple of weeks to talk about the excitement of having a horse that we own. I mean, we own some of these horses. I have a 30-1 Barry running in, I think, race 1 or 2 on Kentucky Derby Saturday at Churchill Downs. So even for me, it's kind of cool, right? Start the day off right.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great.
30-1. I know what my chances are, but that's okay. It still kind of kicks off the day in a really, really cool way. Barry, let's get to the race. This is the Kentucky Oaks for fillies, 3-year-olds going a mile and an eighth. The marquee event so far of the year. And to me, what a competitive bunch. I think you've got a really tough decision to make here, which is why I've gone with a couple. You've gone with a couple. Is that what you've walked away with, saying this is a tough race to kind of land on one of these fillies?
Yeah, this is a extremely tough race, and it drew tough as well. I mean, it was tough just with the horses that are in the race, but now the draw made it extra tough because kind of the best horses are towards the outside. So it's going to be a real interesting race to the turn to see where everybody gets position.
The first horse you started off with was one that I didn't give as much attention to. That is the one, Tapicinelli. What did you see about this Milligan-trained filly who is 2 wins with 6 races, and one of those is over a wet dirt? Something
That,
maybe that's why you've
that
landed on her.
that's exactly it. She has some wet track ability. It may come up a little wet on Friday. So I want to keep that one in the holster because that horse got in a bit of trouble in the last couple of races. Her first foray in the graded stakes company. And I think she's a little bit better than what she shows on paper, and she moves up on the wet track. So yeah, I definitely want to include her.
Where else did you go?
Went to the 6, another long shot in Lemon Muffin, and another horse that was kind of in and out of trouble a lot in previous races and just didn't break her maiden. Then she finally broke the maiden in the Honeybee, going a mile and 16th for the first time. And it seems like this horse is getting better. And I think this race, pace wise, is going to heat up front. And I'm looking for kind of closers to finish this race off. And they did that very well in that Honeybee, and she got a lot out of the first race, then was wide kind of the whole way in her last race in the Fantasy, the grade 2. So I think that one can turn the tables.
And I'm showing you what Race Lens provides for you from Echo Base, something that I've been using a lot of. And what you can go right here is click on Run Style. And it has Regulatory Race and Our Pretty Woman as the early speed with quite a few pressers. And they actually expect the pace to slow down a little bit in the middle of the race here. I'm still getting used to the pace that Race Lens provides for me, but this gives you a good little sense of how quickly you can kind of sign right in here and take a look. Barry, I'm going to start with the first horse that I am very interested in. Now, I think this is a race between 2 horses, and I'll get to them first, but I did land on this number 3, Where's My Ring, for a long shot horse that I want to include on my ticket. The last race speed figure of 101. But what I want you to pay attention to here is the last 3 races, they added blinkers for this horse. Okay, now this horse prior to that was kind of falling behind the field. You can see first call, 7th place, 6th place, not really doing much, right? They make the change to blinkers, and suddenly this horse shows quite a bit of speed and comes out in that gazelle and puts up the circled here with the blue highlight means that it was the highest speed figure in the past performances for this race. At 15-1, there's 5 really, standouts, I think. I always have these little scenarios in my head where maybe some of those standouts burn each other out, and you get a horse like this, who with that equipment change has kind of been a completely different horse. Where's My Ring is a horse that I'm absolutely going to include on my ticket. Actually has raced over a wet dirt as well with a 3rd place. Has 8 races, so the experience is there for me. And I'm going to go back to what I showed you on the true odds, because one thing I picked up on is if I organ this by late pace, 102.5 is actually not too far off. So I think that this horse, although is going to be forwardly placed with those blinkers, has at least going by the late pace number, the ability to hang around, not hang. I should say hang around. We don't want to hang. We want to hang around. So Where's My Ring is a horse that I'm going to include on my ticket, but not who I have in my top 2 picks. Any interest in Where's My Ring, or what concerns should I have?
No, I mean, you kind of laid out a good scenario that's definitely possible. I mean, this field is so tough. A lot of things can go right and a lot of things can go wrong, and horses can move up and win, and so it's very interesting how you laid that out. But it definitely is very very possible that this horse runs big.
Let's go to a horse that we agree on, and that is the number 11, Ways and Means. What did you like about Ways and Means?
I mean, she was a runner from the get go. And I think stretching out is better for her. And I mean, from the workout, I mean, she's ready to go. I know people were knocking that last workout is 46 at Churchill, but I don't know. I think that's well within her scope, and I don't think she was doing it like overly fast or anything like visually. So I think she's ready, and we'll probably get that nice 5-1 price too.
That was the maiden breaker that I was actually at. I saw that race live with Ways and Means, breaking her maiden up at Saratoga by 12 lengths. Christina Blacker, I'll give credit to for commenting on the same workout that you just talked about, right? Look at these workouts, these bullets going 46. And there was actually some concern from Chad about how fast she went, right? But what Christina said was, look at the one prior on April 20th at the Payson training track. She said that dirt is much thicker, much heavier. It's harder to kind of get around, okay? And she puts up 1 minute in that workout. And Christina, who I absolutely respect's opinion, said she made that look pretty easy, even though that was over that stickier mud track. So to come back to Churchill and put up a 46 looking the same way that she did in that Payson track is actually very flattering, in the fact that, like what you just said and what you noticed, is that it wasn't taking that much to go 46. And if she shows the talent that she showed in that maiden special weight up at Saratoga, I think she's absolutely a player here. And as you maybe mentioned there, watch the break here of that last race. Has some trouble in the last two races,
Definitely.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And this was a race that you actually drew my attention to on the one here, who was Power Squeeze, who you're going to get to, who breaks well. But she's the 4, okay? Right here in the middle. And look at the trouble that she suddenly has. Bumped, bumped, bumped. And because of this, she's going to end up wide basically the rest of this race, whereas Power Squeeze is going to get that rail. And when they come down, we'll fast forward here a little bit further. Why don't you talk a little bit about Power Squeeze, who's the one in this race?
Yeah, she's a good finisher. I noticed her when she ran at Tampa um, back in the Suncoast in February, and she finished that race really strong. And I bet her back in the Gulfstream Park Oaks, where she kind of had a more difficult trip, had to kind of circle horses and then finish the race off. And she was coming hard and fast, and she ended up winning that race at 11-1. So I think she just has the closing kick in a race like this, that the pace seems like it's going to get hot up front.
Yeah, you're going to see her in the middle here behind this front 3 coming on the 1, and she is going to swing to the outside there. And Ways and Means is your 4, who's going fairly easy here. I think maybe Jockey thinks he's got this race won, and you'll see him turn to his right when he realizes someone's right. Where is it? He looks to his right there, and he goes, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. And it's too late at that point. But I think that you can maybe chalk up that getting beat there by that much as how far they had to go around that first turn after all that bumping. And maybe that's the difference between Power Squeeze and Ways and Means. Did you use anybody else? I got to look.
The 12, no, 11 and 12.
Yes.
Yeah.
12.
6, 11, and 12.
Tell me about, so that's Power Squeeze. Yes, sorry.
Yes,
so the other horse that I absolutely want to use on my ticket, and those loyal fans who watched me do the fantasy stakes on Doubling Down, I took 5 fillies in this race, and Torpedo Anna was not one of those. And one thing that I found very nice and easy now with Race Lens is the ability to just call up these replays, and you start kind of watching them, and it gives me a quick. I wasn't a huge replayer watching of replays because it was so tedious to try and find the races you're Googling and going to YouTube and what number. This has made it nice and easy for me. this horse, what I love is the way this horse finishes races. Confident, outkick, drew off. These are the comments that I like to see in races where they're going longer, right? They're going a mile and an eighth. So these races that are at a mile and a 16th, I want a horse that's finishing strong. She also has that last race, the highest speed figure, tied with the other horse that I had mentioned earlier. And Torpedo Anna, to me, runs back the way she did in that Oaklawn race, I think is absolutely a contender here. And at 5-1, I love Just FYI, but just watching back Torpedo Anna, these replays absolutely made me interested in her. I think her style sets up nicely for this race. And as we talked about, as I showed those late pace numbers, she's right at the top. And at the mile and the eighth, I want the horse that's going to be closing late.
Oh, definitely. I mean, she hasn't done anything wrong, really. I mean, she's won every time she's won. It's by open length, so it wouldn't surprise me if she runs away on Friday.
Yeah, and the one thing I want you to notice, she's third on the outside here in the maroon with the white sleeves. This jockey doesn't even move on her. I mean, so steady, right? And she's making quick work of the front runners in this race. And when he turns the turn, he's going to give a little push, and she's going to go.
Gone.
And, look, he hasn't moved yet. Not even moving, and he's pulling away at that point. And then gives a little bit of urging, and off she goes. And I completely messed up this daily double when we did this race a couple weeks ago. So she made me look foolish. She's not going to make me look foolish again. Torpedo Anna is actually, to be honest, my top pick here in the Kentucky Oaks. So as we move on, Barry, the marquee event of the year. Let's get right to it. It is the Kentucky Derby. It's fun just saying that. We're always saying like the Florida Derby, a Rebel, a Risen Star. When you can finally say it's the Kentucky Derby, it's a special episode. This is episode 75, by the way. This is the 150th
nice.
Kentucky Derby. So I somehow planned that out perfectly. Game of Silks, $55,000 to a real owner in the Game of Silks. That's real money. And we have quite a few horses here that are owned in the Game of Silks. So best of luck to all of our colleagues in the Game of Silks. They feel like true owners. I had locked. I thought I was going to have some fun on Derby, but it just didn't work out. And it shows you how delicate getting into the gate can be and how much more difficult it can be to even win this race. Barry, you and I haven't talked about the Kentucky Derby at all. I haven't listened to Going in Circles yet, so I'll have to do that. So I'd love to hear your first impressions on the race first before we get into who you like. Just kind of what's your initial impressions of Kentucky Derby 150?
It's always a real competitive race, but even more so this year because a lot of these horses they're not as seasoned as in years past, and that's been getting shorter and shorter. I mean, we got a bunch of horses here making their fourth start in a big race like this, going a mile and a quarter. That's hard to do. That being said, those sort of angles can separate a lot of these horses, that may not, you might not think they have the conditioning to win a mile and a quarter race against this kind of competition. So you can kind of narrow it down to about 4 or 5 of them that really have a good shot at winning. And then beyond that, it's going to be a free for all. So I would say like bets like tries and supers are probably going to be the place to be because I think it's just going to pay astronomical.
Yeah. Do you subscribe to the notion that there's kind of the two top horses in the number 2 and the number 17, Fierceness and Sierra Leone, and then sort of everybody else, or do you see it closer than that?
No, that's pretty accurate. And one drew inside and one drew way outside. They all have holes. That's why they're not like going to be overwhelming favorites, or they shouldn't be. But that second tier is right next to them. If they don't run or don't run well, any number of those second tier type horses can win this race.
We agreed on one horse we agreed on both horses in the day double. I just went a lot deeper. This is Derby. So if you're first time watching in and you're putting in the comments that I'm an idiot because I'm going too deep on my daily double, watch the other 74 episodes, right, Barry? Because from being with me that I do $2, $3, $4, $5 doubles to keep it manageable. My ticket is $18. I went 3 horses in the first leg there. So we're going to go a little bit deep, more deeper than I've ever gone on any shows with 6 horses. But we agree to start on number 7, Honor Marie. What is it that you have picked up on Honor Marie that makes you attracted to him?
I like his closing style, and if things fall apart, usually horses like in the middle of the pack can emerge and kind of run hard and get close to winning. A lot of that used to happen in the 80s and 90s, and even the early 2000s when you get those mid-pack moves where horses were kind of inside and things kind of broke their way. And I got the feeling that Honor Marie's that kind of horse that might be able to get that kind of position and could finish it off if things go the right way.
Yeah, I love that as well. The other thing I love, I did a media guide run through about a week ago here on the channel, and I just looked at some kind of cool stats. And one thing I dug into was how many jockeys won the Kentucky Derby in their first start. And it was actually 23, which to me was like, wow, that's actually a lot higher than I thought it would be, right? And the last one was obviously Sonny Leone on Rich Strike. Before that was, I believe, Mario Gutierrez. And the reason I'm going down this path is you get a jockey here by the name of Ben Curtis, whose first Kentucky Derby, right? But Ben Curtis comes from overseas where he is used to running in 20 and 30 horse fields. And there's a great interview that Riders Up posted on Twitter about him talking about this as if it's just another race for him. And it's not really that big of a deal. Obviously, it's a big deal because it's the Kentucky Derby. And as a jockey, it's the absolute race that you want to be in. But I like that fact. And then knowing that history doesn't necessarily mean you need to have a couple races under your belt in order to be successful in the Kentucky Derby. I think he's going to be able to match what you said as far as the style that the horse wants to run and be able to navigate the horse that may get first run on some of those deep closers like Sierra Leone, who maybe is going to run into some traffic, maybe catching freedom, and is going to maybe have that first jump. And I will take a shot with Honor Marie as well. With 20-1, we've kind of heard this is the wise guy horse, right? So I don't think we're going to be getting 20-1. Do you?
No, I'd say probably closer to like 15 to 12-ish, maybe even lower than that.
Yeah, I also I did include Just a Touch on my ticket. Just a Touch is a horse that I've heard the comparison similar to Mage last year, right? And you can make some of those comparisons with the fact that didn't run as a 2-year-old, increasing speed figures here as a 3-year-old, very much in the same range as what Mage had for speed figures coming into the Kentucky Derby. A little bit of a similar style in running as well, only finished at length and a half behind Sierra Leone in the Bluegrass. And to me, there's a little bit of that question of what more could Just a Touch do as far as bringing talent to the table. You've got the horses that have run 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times in the Coach Lucas's instance there with Just Steel. If Just a Touch takes another step forward, I think he's very dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. This horse is really talented, and kind of had a little hard luck in both the races that he lost. So he's definitely one of the ones that I was talking about, the top tier that can win this race. I thought it was 3 of them actually: Fierceness, Just a Touch, and Forever Young. Those 3 are probably the main ones.
Nice. Well, the good transition, because I use Forever Young on my ticket as well. I've been a little bit of a sucker. Now, I'll tell you, Barry, going into this Derby, I've tried to really remember to let go of the biases that you create in your mind over the course of the 6 months of watching these horses, right? You fall in love with them. And thank God Locke's not in the race, because I'd be on here touting him till the cows came home and then finished 8th, and I'd be, I'd look like the fool. I've touted for 2.5 years now, Japan, coming through with the horse on the big stage since what they did in the Breeders' Cup. What they did in that Breeders' Cup, the same trainer comes back with Forever Young this year. Forever Young's 5 for 5, over $2 million in earnings. They've talked about the kickback a little bit. Is he not going to like that? Which kind of makes sense why he's been so wide on the last 2 races in the UAE Derby and the Saudi Derby. But I'm not going to let let him beat me. I can't go 2 years of talking about Japan's going to win on the big stage, then come on doubling down and leave Forever Young off. The workout 103 was like, oh my God, this, he's not going to like kick back. Oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing? But I'm not going to, I'll spend the $3 extra a little bit here to cover myself with Forever Young. But I think he's a talented horse. Is he as good enough to win here? I think maybe with Fierceness and Sierra Leone, no. But like you said, if they don't get their trips, it's certainly wide open. And maybe that's where Forever Young takes advantage of that, right?
Yeah, it's just really interesting how good this horse is. He's definitely going to get the class test, for sure. And I think we might know early uh, where things are going to lie. I know last year, Derma Sogoragake got a horrible trip and still ran pretty well. And then we didn't see him again until the Breeders' Cup, and he ran a great race that day. So, these horses are definitely in shape. I mean, the way they train them, and it, I expect that horse to be, a real contender in this race, or going to show up. You're going to see this horse somewhere near the front, if not on
Yeah.
the lead at some point.
Yeah, Dermot Gotti finished 6th. They just keep inching a little bit closer and closer, right? It was 13th before that. Then they came up with 6th with a bad trip. Well, you never know, and I'm going to take my shot. I'm also going to take my shot with Endlessly. I think I've said on this show a couple of times, or at least on this channel, me and Sean Patrick Nolan watched Endlessly's first race on the paddock at Saratoga together. Now, what we talked about together was, wow, look at this 2-year-old burst through a seam in the first race. That's some talent. The horse has been on the turf, has been on the synthetic. We know all that, right? If any glimmer of that talent translates to the dirt, I want Endlessly on my ticket, especially at a price of 30 to 1. I understand the risk I'm taking. You're taking risk with all of these horses. If the horse shows any talent similar to what he showed in that opening race as a 2-year-old on the dirt, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with including Endlessly on my ticket. I'm going to include him in my tries and supers as well, because I think people are automatically tossing him because of this thought that he's a turf and synthetic horse, which possibly true. I think he's gotten more accustomed to the Churchill Downs track as they've done more workouts. You could compare the notes of Michael McCarthy the first time, when we know we didn't even really want to put him in the Derby, to this last workout, which was actually pretty solid, 47 and change. Endlessly's one I'm keeping on my ticket.
Yeah, he's definitely, you're going to get your price, that's for sure. I mean, he could be any kind. I mean, he could take to the dirt easily in a race. I know people squawk about workouts, things like that, but I mean, a race is a whole different story for all of them. So, I would definitely include that horse on tickets.
Let's get to your other horse, the big name on the ticket.
Our guy, number 17, Fierceness.
But he's in the 16 hole.
Yeah, that's true. I just think he's the fastest horse in the race. He's proven it last year. He's proven it this year. I don't think he has to even improve on that figure he got in the Florida Derby in order to beat this field. He just has to have a clean trip. If he doesn't get a clean trip, he's toast.
You think so?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's not going to be on the lead. I don't believe he's going to be on the lead. I think he's going to be sitting off the pace a little bit. But he's got to be clear. He doesn't want the kickback either, and he'll just kind of drift out wide to try to avoid it. But if he gets out ahead of it, he'll be fine. And I think, Johnny V is the perfect rider for him to get to that nice spot, kind of almost like the American Pharoah trip that Victor gave that horse. If you watch that replay, that's the exact trip that Fierceness should try to get.
Yeah, and someone put a video up of Barbaro as well. Another
Similar, yeah.
Similar style, right? I don't know that I subscribe to this camp that if he has any trouble, he's done. I think that the excuses for the Holy Bull was that it was a long layoff after the Breeders' Cup, and that's not the goal. So people might knock it up that he bumped. Now, he should have beat that field, right? I remember, and this is the bias I'm trying to break, I went into that single Fierceness, he roll, let's go, and then he lets you down, and you're like, oh man, I'm done with fierceness. But the same thing that you've said, he's the fastest horse. The Brisnet, the Beyer speed figures, he's put up a 110. The only other horse that has a 100 plus is Mystic Dan, who did it on a sloppy track. And Beyer was on Steve Bick this week saying how kind of low the rest of the field from a speed figure standpoint is. I mean, I don't even know if anybody's put up over 95.
No, there's not
Other
many.
right. So I mean, fierceness is well ahead from that standpoint, and he's my top pick. I joked with Tim last week that it was Forever Young, but if fierceness runs his race, he wins. If fierceness gets into a little bit of trouble and still runs his race, I think he wins. The one thing I am concerned about, which you can point to specifically happening, is the start when he lunged at the break and was completely out of that race, right?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that fear of the break, and if he doesn't get off, at that point, I think you could say, yes, he's not going to be closing like Catching Freedom and Sierra Leone necessarily to get back into a race if he slips up like that.
Yeah, I think that goes for most most of these
That's
horses.
true. That's true.
If they do anything like that in this race, it's going to be hard to recover. Horses have done it, but not many.
I'm going to include Resilience as well on my ticket. Jessica Tugwell, the pedigree expert here, has been touting Resilience as someone to take a look at. I've gone back and looked. She pointed out this horse he's the bully. You bump into this horse and he's not moving. He's going where he wants to go. And the speed figures from a Bill Mott trained horse that continue to improve. Literally, right? I mean, it's Equibase here, 71, 80, 83, 91, 93, 103. This horse is peaking at the right time to be running into the Kentucky Derby. I don't subscribe to this. The horse hasn't come from a particular prep, so therefore you've got to toss him because, as we know, the Wood Memorial hasn't been as productive in Kentucky Derby winners. But guess what? The Bluegrass the winner hasn't won a Kentucky Derby since Strike the Gold, which is the first Derby I remember as a kid. So long time ago there, right? You don't necessarily need to take the history of post positions and the history of prep races and apply them to this year. That's where you might get yourself into some trouble.
Yeah, people do that a lot, and I'm like, why?
It's fun. It's fun to talk about, but when you start looking at the races, you need to watch the horses and pay attention to that as opposed to what particular race it actually was, right?
Exactly.
Any interest in Resilience at 20-1?
Yeah, that was a horse that I definitely wanted to include in like tries and supers, because like you said, he's been running really, really good, and I don't know. I think this outside post might help him a little bit because it might
All of
get him.
fierceness.
Yeah, basically, and that might kind of use fierceness as a lead blocker, or even the outside horse. Epic Ride has a lot of speed, and they're probably going to have to go and might want to follow that one to a certain point and then kind of settle into a spot. But yeah, if they're behind fierceness, like directly behind or to the right outside, they might be in trouble.
That right side of the gate I talked when the post positions were drawn is like the flying V. The right side, the top is going to be fierceness, and then Stronghold, Resilience, Society Man, just line up and make that V and follow fierceness to the front and try to keep up if you can, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough, man. There's 19 other horses. It's always a log jam. I mean, I go back and watch the replays, and you see like right around where the finish line is when they cross under the first time. That's where they all get bunched up, and that's where some trips happen. Be like, oh man, he's done. There's no way. I think it was a few years ago, Gary Stevens, when he was still riding. That happened to him and he got completely cut off. I think it was the winner that cut him off too. But he had no shot after that and he knew it. And that's what he told the owners and the trainer and everybody.
In the essence of the NFL draft, our picks are in, presented by SureBet Coffee. It's a sure thing for us, hopefully, this week, Sniper. Like I said, this is unusual for me, but I'm going with an $18 ticket. I would recommend, if you're playing in this, maybe do 511 over the 17 and do that for like $3, $4. So that, because if it comes up ways and means and fierceness, you know, you're not going to make your money back, but you put a little bit more on that particular combination to cover yourself that way. I'm going to go 3, 5, 11 with the 7, 8, 11, 14, 17, 19 for $18. That's the most horses I've had to say on my ticket here. Sniper's going 1, 6, 11, 12 with the 7 and 17 for $8 for the Oaks Derby Daily Double for 2024. Barry, I so appreciate you coming on and taking another stab at the Daily Double. Where are you going to be Derby Saturday?
I am going to be at home. I'm going to turn my living room into a race book, and me and my daughter are going to hang out and bet all day.
Well, I hope to see the reaction video that we've accustomed to seeing of you reacting to the finish of the Kentucky Derby. Who are you going to be cheering home the most? Is it Fierceness?
Yes, absolutely. I want Fierceness all the way.
All right, then I'm going to do the same. We'll both take our videos and we'll have some fun social content for next week. All right?
All right.
All right. He's Sniper. Follow him on Twitter. Thanks so much. Everybody, good luck. Put in your comments what your Oaks Derby Daily Double is.